So today we'll be learning about Flexbox. Earlier we have discussed about grid, which is used to make layouts. Flexbox is also used to make layouts, but there are some differences between Flexbox and grid. Although Flexbox is similar to grid, but Flexbox is more flexible than grid. Now to understand Flexbox, let's create a file called flex.html and let's close this for a while. And here we'll write the proper HTML structure. Start with doc type and then HTML tag. First we have head. Inside this let's write title and we can give a title of flex, and then let's create the body element. Okay, save this file and open this with live server. There we have the flex file. Okay, now to understand a flex, let's do the same thing what we have done in flex. Let's create a div element, and inside this let's create two div elements. And for both the div element we can give value of div1 and here div2. Save this. Now we have these two elements, div1, div2, inside another div. Now just like grid, we needed a container which can be further converted into a flex, and the container contains some element. Let's also give this div1 and div2 some background color so that we can see it clearly. Now for the styles, in grid.html we have created another CSS file. Here we can do one thing. We can write the styles besides our element only. And how can we do that? Here write style, and inside this double quotation whatever style will be writing will apply to this div element. For example, let's write background color, and again let's say aqua. Save this. Now you will see this CSS got applied to this div element. Now this is another way of writing CSS. Till now we have learned three ways of writing CSS. First one, inside the head element we can create a style element, and inside that element we can target any element by its class name. And the second way was what we used in grid.html. We can create another CSS file and link that file to this file, and we can give all the styles to that file. And this is the third way. We can directly give a style attribute, and inside that we can write any style we want. This is obviously not the most convenient way to write because it makes our code very tedious. But since here we are only practicing, so it's easier for us to kind of see what styles we are applying. Styles are just right next to our element. This method of styling called inline styles. So let's add some background color to this div2 element also. Let's give this yellow. Save this. Okay, fine. Now let's convert this div element into a flex. For that, first give it a style attribute, and here we'll write our style in a new line. So press enter, enter, and here we'll write our style. So write display flex, and the next line write flex direction and write row. Save this. There we go. Now we have successfully converted these two div elements into a flex. Let's zoom in for a while. Now let's compare this flex to our grid. Here what we did is first we set the width of these columns and then we put the text inside the column, but here the width of the column depends upon the content that is present inside this text. So if we write more content, let's say write some more content. Now save this. See, since our text got increased, therefore the width of this column automatically got increased. So Flexbox is a flexible box. Its size increases or decreases with the content of the element. Therefore, it is called a Flexbox. And here grid is a rigid kind of structure. Here we have fixed the width, so no matter what we write inside this element, the layout will remain exactly same. But here it changes as we add new text. Let's say this. There is also one similarity between flex and grid. For example, in any of this element, if we write a new line of content, for example, let's make a paragraph element and write some new text. See, the height of this element increased, therefore this element also got increased. Flex also maintained its vertical alignment, just like grid. Okay, let's create another flex box. So copy the text from here and paste it here. Let's fix this styling. Okay, this time what we're gonna do is, just like CSS, we will give them a particular width for both these elements. So first let's move our CSS code in a new line and then write width 150 pixel. Save this. Okay, now we have another flex with the first element having a width of 150 pixel. So now before moving further, let's give this flex an upward margin so that it is differentiable with the previous flex. So here we can write margin top, let's say 40 pixel. Perfect. Now we're going to give this div element a width that is equal to the remaining space of the line. For example, in terms of grid, we have written 1 fr, something like that. For that, let's make this code look clear. Okay, perfect. And now here, to give this a width of 1 fr, we will write a special flex property, that is flex and then 1. Save this. Okay, there we go. This flex 1 is equivalent to 1 fr in grid. Now you will see this is taking up the remaining space of the line. Now just like in the grid, when we give both the element a width of 1 fr, then they both become equal. Let's say here also we write flex and write 1. Save this. Now the width of this both element is equal, or we can even give this flex 1 or this flex 2. Now the width of this flex is twice the width of this first one, which means make 3 part of this entire line and give the first part to first div element and remaining 2 to this div element. So basically this number represents ratio like 1 and 2, which means convert this remaining space in a ratio of 1:2. Now these are the similarities in Flexbox and grid. Now the one main difference is, if we swap the order of these elements, for example, let's cut this from here and paste it here. Now what will happen is, see, now this time first element is having the width of 2 flex and the second element is having the width of flex 1. Now since we changed the order of these div elements, therefore its layout also got changed. Earlier first element was flex 1 and second element was flex 2, but now it is reversed. First element is flex 2 and second element is flex 1. But in grid.html, if we have swapped the value, for example here we have div 2 and div 3. Now let's swap the value of div 2 with div 3. Now div 3 is before div 2. Save this. See, the layout remained the same. Here also this element came before this div 2 element, but this layout remained same. Earlier div 3 element had the width of 1 fr, but now it is having a width of 2 fr. So you see the layout remained the same. Therefore grid is a rigid layout system and flex is a flexible layout system. Let's make this as it was. Okay, perfect. Now there is one more difference between flex and grid. In grid, notice we can have multiple columns and multiple rows at the same time. But for flex, we cannot have the same. We can have multiple columns or multiple rows, but we cannot have both at the same time. For example, if you want this element to appear below this element, then you can change the flex direction from row to column, which means earlier the direction of flex was row. All the element was going inside one row, but now since I have changed the direction of flex from row to column, now they will all, now the new element will fall in a single column. Let's save this. There you go. Now you will see both these elements are having a width of flex 1, although here we have written the first element to have a width of flex 2 and second for the flex 1. But for the first, it cannot have flex 2 because since there is only one element in this line, so flex 2 does not make any sense. Therefore, this is also having width of flex 1, and this we already knew flex 1. Okay, perfect.